Hello everyone, this is Dr. Kimberly Green, your course designer, and I want to point out something that may seem small, but it actually is incredibly empowering for each one of us as we move forward in doing comparative ethnographic research and our signature assignments. That paper, you will note, you already have the rubric, it's posted for you. And when you get down to description of the social context, clearly describes, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you can read, you don't need me to read it for you. There is a component to ethnographic research that is worth pointing out. The text of this Prezi offers you a nod to Tobin. And this is Tobin, Joseph Tobin. This is a paper. It's actually a bit of a critique as well as an analysis of recent comparative ed methodologies and processes. And Tobin is specifically pointing out something that he feels has been missing from the work. I've read a lot of comp ed, old stuff, new stuff. We've got our books. I agree with what he's sharing and feel it's empowering for you to have his perspective. This paper was published in 2014, so indeed it is very recent. The paper is Comparative Diachronic Ethnographic Research on Education. Diachronic. Oh my goodness, what are you adding now to my understanding of ethnographic methodology in comparative ed? Well, let's first look at the word diachronic. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines it as relating to or dealing with phenomena, language or culture, as they occur or change over time. So what diachronic really focuses on, and what Tobin has written this entire paper, is making the case that in quite a bit of comparative ed research, which again, with an ethnographic methodology, focusing on culture, what tends to get lost is historical context from a cultural perspective, because whatever we are focusing on, whatever you are focusing on for your study, your analysis, your exploration, whether it's gender equality in your three countries, United States has got to be one, or it's special education services available in your three countries, recognize that when you are focusing in on the social fabric, the schooling structures, the successes, the challenges, blah, 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 you need to be clear with how this came to be. Not just what is. In your social context section for your individual countries, you're not just saying, and this is what it is. You're giving more context to how it became what it is. How did the social fabric come to be? Was it that over time there was a strong religious bent and therefore blah, blah, blah? Was it that the government structure has changed so much over the past 20 years? Whatever it is, recognize whatever we're studying didn't just happen. I am the one that did the highlighting here. The copy that I have posted for you also has these highlights. I am strongly encouraging you to download and glance over. I know we're all busy. The trick to doing this right is to simultaneously think about space and time in this ethnographic version of the United Field theory of physics. The social context, not just what it is, but how it came to be, right? And then when you move into the juxtaposition, it's important in the interpretation as well, but even more so in the juxtaposition, that you keep that in mind and include it as a relevant part of the overall juxtaposition as it relates to the topic. growth over time, degraded over time. And I'm sure some of you right now are going, juxtaposition? How did she make that leap? Well, it's a very crucial part of doing meaningful comparative education. And both books mention it. They don't go as in-depth with it as I wish they did, but let's take a look at it right now. When we're talking about a juxtaposition, we're talking about the act or the instance of placing two or more, in our case it'll be three, things side by side. Well, side by side is actually kind of not the best way to think about it. I like to think of it as a Venn diagram. A juxtaposition is where you have your individual components, and here for us it would be countries. So, and I like this one because I'm small too, and I have green eyes, I'd probably be here with Kermit. I don't think I have bad grammar, although I'm sure some people would disagree with that, but you know, we're not going there. So you want to think of your juxtaposition as writing out a Venn diagram. You do your individual research, your interpretations, but you can't move into an authentic comparing process where you're going to really learn the most of all without being very clear with terminology, with processes, all these ethnographic concepts we have studied in our comparative ed work. If my subject is gender equity in schooling, and here's the United States, and here's China, and here's Finland. What is individual in that country? Where is their overlap? And you will probably need to explain the overlap because terminology is different. Sometimes the same words are used, but to mean a completely different thing. Sometimes completely different terms are used, which actually mean the same thing. Where it is relevant for understanding and gaining knowledge and real depth in this process, where it is relevant, you definitely want to craft your juxtapositions so that this concept, this recognition of the time and space element in how your focus got to where it is today in your individual countries is not forgotten. All right? A lot of what he says here absolutely mirrors what's in our two books, so I don't want you to think this is completely going out on some crazy tangent, but it is an element that with all the reading and all the researching and the exploring and the talking to other people who do this work, when I mention this, I kept getting that nod that, oh, yes, we're aware of Tobin, and yes, he's right, he's got a great idea. That was pretty consistent. One last thing I want to point out. Tobin does a really wonderful job of not falling into the trap of positivism, of crafting universal laws or truths. He truly walks the talk of comparative ed, of examining for understanding, of gaining in depth of knowledge from a 360-degree perspective. And in his writing, he is very clear using terms like our research suggests, the research suggests, my research suggests, I see a pattern, there appears to be. Remember, in comparative ed, you are never answering a question on a universal level, which is why when you actually craft your question that guides your work, your thesis statement, your hypotheses, your guiding question, clear presentation of an appropriate thesis statement or research questions, it cannot be a yes or no. A comparative ed analysis or research paper is never based upon a yes or no, because we're not out to quote unquote answer. We are out to gain an understanding, to come up with new ideas about how things could be done by examining what is being done, juxtaposing how it's being done in different countries, and then drawing conclusions. What can we now, after having done all this work, what can we learn? What could country one learn from country two? What could country two learn from country one? What could the United States? Okay, you got it. My point is, there's a lot of moving pieces here. Doing comparative ed research or analysis, you can use the terms interchangeably for the sake of this class, this paper. Doing this kind of work is about empowering you as an individual to understand with a strong qualitative cultural bent what is being done, how did it come to be, and what can we learn from it. And the only way we can truly then bring that into our own practice, into our schools, into our family schools, however your situation manifests itself, the only way we can do that is if we recognize how the individual components work together to serve the whole of the process and then the understanding that comes from it. So that is why I am strongly urging you in your process of doing your qualitative, ethnographic, methodology-oriented, comparative research or analysis, that you don't forget the diachronic element to the work. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Well, there you are. I hope this has added a greater sense of clarity. Thank you for your attention.